The studio lights blazed down like relentless suns, illuminating every bead of sweat rolling across Donald Trump's forehead. His face flushed crimson, contorted with fury as he slammed his palm against the podium. Cameras zoomed in, catching the tremor in his voice as it cracked, louder than the applause lines he so desperately sought. The audience shifted uneasily, a low murmur rippling through the hall. While producers behind the glass exchanged frantic looks, this was no ordinary outburst. Across from him stood Barack Obama, unflinching, calm, radiated from his posture. His eyes, steady and sharp, locked on Trump with the precision of a surgeon preparing for the decisive cut. He didn't raise his voice, and he didn't break a sweat. Instead, he waited, patient, deliberate, though he had seen this unraveling 1,000 times before. The contrast was electric. Chaos on one side, composure on the other. Trump leaned forward, spittle flying as he barked accusations, his sentences stumbling over one another like a man sprinting downhill with no control. The sound of his fist, pounding against the lectern, echoed like a desperate drumbeat. He pointed at Obama, his finger trembling not with strength, but with frustration. And then it happened. Obama straightened, his expression cool, his tone even. Every camera lens seemed to tilt toward him, and every breath in the room was held still. He said, with devastating clarity, "You lied to the American people, and tonight we have the proof." The words cut through the noise like a blade through glass. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Trump froze, eyes blinking rapidly, as if trying to process the enormity of what had just been unleashed. Somewhere in the distance, a chair scraped against the floor. The tension was suffocating, the silence deafening. And in that suspended moment, Trump's mask of bravado began to crack. One truth became undeniable. No one watching live could have predicted the storm that was about to unfold. Before we break down this historic showdown, pause for just a moment. If you want more of these legendary political face-offs dissected with all the drama, the context, and the truth the headlines leave out, make sure you hit subscribe, tap that notification bell, and join us as we pull back the curtain on the battles shaping our democracy. Because what you're about to witness is not just politics, it's history unfolding in real time. Now, let's rewind. The confrontation you just glimpsed didn't erupt out of nowhere. It wasn't some chance encounter on a random evening. This was a nationally televised town hall, a broadcast carried live across every major network, watched by tens of millions of Americans hungry for answers in an era clouded with misinformation. The stage had been set long before either man stepped under those searing lights. The stakes? Nothing less than the public's trust in truth itself. On one side stood Donald Trump, the showman, a man who had built his empire not only on real estate, but also on spectacle. For decades, he had thrived in the glow of cameras, mastering the art of commanding attention with bold proclamations and theatrical gestures. To his supporters, he was the ultimate fighter, unafraid to say what others wouldn't. To his critics, he was chaos incarnate, thriving on exaggeration, dismissing facts with a wave of his hand, and turning every serious question into a performance. And on the other side stood Barack Obama, the statesman. Where Trump reveled in improvisation, Obama embodied meticulous preparation. Every phrase measured, every statistic checked, every argument layered with the precision of a lawyer who knew the courtroom of public. Opinion demanded more than noise. It demanded clarity. He didn't seek to dominate the stage with volume, sought to elevate it with substance. The contrast could not have been sharper. For years, their rivalry had simmered beneath the surface, each representing not just opposing political visions, but fundamentally different ways of engaging with reality itself. Obama's calm discipline versus Trump's impulsive bravado, evidence versus bluster, integrity versus chaos, and the nation felt it. Families gathered in living rooms, remote controls gripped tight. College students streamed it on laptops, commentators lined up on Twitter, and watch parties buzzed in crowded bars. The collective anticipation was palpable. This wasn't merely another debate, it was a collision of two archetypes. The disciplined professor, squaring off against the showman who thrived on disruption. People didn't just tune in to hear policy proposals. They tuned in to witness whether truth could withstand the hurricane of spectacle. Could a statesman armed with facts hold his ground against a showman who had made a career of bending reality? The answer would not come quickly, nor quietly. As the cameras rolled and the audience leaned forward, both men knew this was more than a debate. It was a reckoning. And while the night began with rehearsed opening statements and polite exchanges, the undercurrent of tension was building towards something no one could ignore, because beneath the bright lights, two paths for America were about to collide head-on, and the first sparks of that collision were only just beginning to fly. Long before Donald Trump stormed onto the political stage, he was already a master of performance. From glossy magazine covers to reality television boardrooms, he cultivated an image larger than life, an image built not on policy nor principle, but on spectacle. The skyline of New York carried his name in golden letters, and for decades, that name became a brand synonymous with opulence, excess, and self-promotion. But behind the facade of luxury and bravado, there was a through line that would come to define his political style: the relentless pursuit of attention, no matter the cost. When Trump announced his run for president, pundits laughed. They saw a showman, not a statesman. They expected a short-lived publicity stunt, not a seismic disruption to American politics. And yet the very qualities that made him a media curiosity, his willingness to insult, interrupt, and bulldoze through tradition, became the engine of his rise. Cable news couldn't look away. Ratings soared, and Trump learned quickly that outrage was not a liability. It was a weapon. His trademark tactics were unmistakable. When cornered by facts, he doubled down with volume. When challenged on substance, he shifted the focus to personal attacks, interrupted constantly, wielding chaos as a shield against scrutiny. For him, debates weren't about clarity or persuasion, they were about dominance, about leaving. Opponents flustered under the weight of his theatrics. Every sneer, every dismissive hand wave, and every exaggerated claim was calculated to create a moment, a headline, and a spectacle. Yet within this arsenal of bluster lay a critical flaw: his disdain for preparation. Trump prided himself on being instinctual, on speaking off the cuff, and on projecting the confidence of a man who claimed he didn't need notes or advisors. To his base, this made him authentic. To his critics, it revealed an emptiness, unwillingness to engage with facts, to build arguments on evidence rather than ego. He once declared, with characteristic swagger, "I know more about ISIS than the generals do." But when pressed for detail, the bravado crumbled into vagueness. Contradiction became his constant companion. He promised, "We're going to replace Obamacare with something terrific. You're going to love it." Yet no plan ever emerged. He boasted of balancing the budget, only to preside over ballooning deficits. He claimed to be the defender of forgotten Americans, even as his policies often favored the wealthy and well-connected. These hypocrisies piled high, but through sheer force of personality, Trump bulldozed past them, leaving opponents scrambling to catch up, and therein lay the danger. He was formidable, not because of his intellect, but because of his ability to turn weakness into theater. A lie, told loudly enough, forced others into defense. An insult, delivered with venom, stole the spotlight from substance. He understood the rhythm of television and the hunger of the media for controversy, and he weaponized it with ruthless efficiency. But fatal overconfidence shadowed him at every step. Trump believed no one could outshine him. No one could outmaneuver the sheer weight of his personality. Preparation, that was for the weak. Facts, a nuisance to be swatted away. In his mind, charm, bravado, and a refusal to ever admit defeat were enough to conquer any stage. He saw opponents crumble under his interruptions, and moderators buckle under his pressure, and he concluded that his method was invincible. What he failed to grasp was that not every opponent was built the same. Some would shrink under the glare of his bombast, but others, those armed with patience, discipline, and irrefutable evidence, were waiting for the moment when his own arrogance would become the very rope by which he would hang himself. On that night, under the unforgiving studio lights, Trump strode onto the stage with the swagger of a man convinced history would once again bend to his will. He smirked, gestured grandly to the crowd, and basked in the roar of applause. Yet lurking beneath the applause was a silence waiting to be filled. Silence that would not be broken by insult nor drowned out by volume. While Trump relished his role as the showman, believing performance was power, he had underestimated the danger of facing an adversary who did not fear spectacle, who came armed not with bluster, but with precision. And in that miscalculation lay the seeds of his undoing. Because on this night, the curtain would rise not on another performance, but on a reckoning. And Trump, blinded by his own arrogance, never saw it coming. If Donald Trump embodied spectacle, Barack Obama embodied substance. From the very beginning, his life had been a study in discipline and preparation, careful layering of experience upon experience, until he stood as a man defined not by noise, but by depth. He was not born into an empire. He was shaped by struggle, sharpened by the quiet rigor of academia, and anchored by the communities he served. Long before he set foot in the White House, Obama was a law professor at the University of Chicago. In the classroom, he was methodical. His lectures not a cascade of shouting, but a careful unfolding of logic. Students recalled the way he listened, the way he took notes on their questions even as he taught them, meticulous, deliberate, never rushing to prove himself through bluster. Every word was chosen, every argument built, brick by brick. It was here, in the discipline of law and debate, that the habits of a lifetime were forged. Study first, speak second. But his grounding was not only in books. On the south side of Chicago, he walked the streets as a community organizer, learning the language of ordinary people, hearing their frustrations and their hopes. He sat in church basements and living rooms, taking notes in small spiral notebooks, scribbling down the struggles of families who felt invisible to those in power. That experience gave him something Trump could never be: an unshakable connection. Two people whose voices were rarely heard on television. It gave him empathy, and it gave him purpose. That empathy would carry on to the biggest stages of his life. When Obama entered politics, he carried with him both the sharpened edge of the professor and the steady heart of the organizer. His speeches were not mere performances. They were arguments grounded in evidence, infused with the stories of ordinary lives. And unlike Trump, he never relied on improvisation or bravado. His weapon was preparation. On the nights leading up to this televised clash, while Trump boasted to aides about how he would wing it, Obama sat in quiet rooms with stacks of documents spread before him. Transcripts of Trump's past interviews, notes from fact-checkers, memos outlining every contradiction, every overblown promise, every careless lie. He read them once, twice, and 3 times. He underlined, he highlighted, and he rehearsed. It's not rehearsed the theatrics, but rehearsed the truth. He anticipated Trump's insults, the interruptions, and the mockery. And he prepared not to meet chaos with chaos, but to meet it with calm precision. It was this contrast that electrified the debate before a single word was spoken. Trump radiated showmanship, striding onto the stage with a grin too wide, waving to the crowd as though stepping onto the set of a reality show. Obama, by comparison, walked with quiet composure. His smile was restrained, his eyes serious, and his notes carefully placed before him on the podium. If Trump was the storm, Obama was the steady shoreline, and viewers felt it. They could sense the difference in every glance, every gesture. Trump thrived on rattling his opponents, on dragging them into the mud where insults replaced arguments. But Obama's strength lay in his refusal to be rattled. His professorial demeanor was not cold, it was deliberate, a refusal to play by the rules of spectacle. He would not chase applause lines or raise his voice to compete. It would simply patiently dismantle falsehood with fact. What made him formidable wasn't only his intellect, but also his grounding in something larger than ego. To Obama, this debate was not about scoring points. It was about defending truth itself, about showing the millions watching that dignity and honesty could still triumph over chaos. He wasn't fighting for himself. He was fighting for the people whose voices had been drowned out by the noise. And yet, even with all his preparation, he carried himself as the underdog. The media often painted him as too professorial, too calm for the modern age of viral politics. Trump's showmanship dominated headlines. His insults guaranteed coverage. But Obama understood something deeper: the truth, once laid bare with patience and precision, had a power no insult could erase. So when he stood on that stage, notes in front of him, eyes fixed on the man who had built a career on noise, Obama knew he was ready. Ready not to shout, but to reveal. Ready not to react, but to expose. He had spent nights anticipating every angle, every dodge, and every desperate swing Trump might attempt. And in that readiness lay the quiet confidence of a man who didn't need to perform because he carried the truth. And the truth was enough. Storm was gathering, Trump's bluster was building, and Obama.com, as ever, was about to unleash the preparation that would change everything. The moment the first question was tossed into the air, Trump pounced like a brawler who'd been waiting. To throw his first punch, he leaned into the microphone, voice booming, hands flailing in wide, exaggerated gestures. Barack Obama, he sneered, is the biggest failure this country's ever seen. Everybody knows it. Disastrous president, weak, pathetic. Crowd gasped at the bluntness. Some cheering, others shifting uneasily in their seats. Obama didn't flinch. He didn't so much as raise an eyebrow. He simply adjusted the papers on his podium, eyes steady, lips pressed into a calm line. The contrast was almost theatrical. One man exploding, the other absorbing every word with the patience of a chess master watching his opponent. Burn clock on pointless moves. Trump interrupted again and again, ignoring the moderator's pleas. For order? He waved his hands dismissively, sneering. You don't even understand business, Barack. I built an empire. You built nothing. His finger jabbed the air, his voice rising with each sentence until it cracked under its own strain. He chuckled derisively after every insult, as though mocking Obama was victory enough. But the camera caught something subtle, something most viewers would only notice later on the replays. Obama's eyes glinted, small, almost imperceptible. Half-smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't arrogance. It was recognition, the look of a man who knew exactly what was coming. The trap was tightening, and his opponent was walking straight into it. Trump, oblivious, barreled forward. You lied about healthcare. You lied about jobs. You lied about everything. And you've been caught. Believe me, you've been caught. He slammed his hand on the podium so hard, the microphone rattled. His voice now echoed through the hall like a man shouting to drown out his own insecurity. Meanwhile, Obama waited. Every second of Trump's tirade was rope he gladly let out, rope that would soon be pulled back with devastating force. The silence on Obama's end was deafening, unnerving, and intentional. Viewers at home felt it in their chests. Something was building. The calm wasn't weakness. It was strategy. The audience began to shift. Some leaned forward, sensing a reckoning was near. Others exchanged nervous glances. The moderator's hands fidgeted with his note cards, clearly struggling to regain control of the room, and still, Obama remained unshaken, his composure almost eerie against the fury across from him. Trump pressed harder, his voice climbing, desperate to provoke. He mimicked Obama's cadence with mockery, rolled his eyes at policy explanations, and even resorted to personal jabs. This guy was a disaster in school. Don't let him fool you. Terrible student, folks. Everybody knows it. The words hung in the air, petty and hollow, but shouted with the confidence of a man who thought volume could rewrite history. And then came the look. Obama finally lifted his gaze fully, meeting Trump's glare, head on. The half-smile deepened, not mocking, not smug, but assured. A silent message radiated from it. I've been waiting for this. The room seemed to tilt in that moment. Trump, still barking, didn't realize he had walked straight into the crosshairs. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, every second. Dragging as viewers sensed a line was about to be crossed, shift about to occur. The trap was sprung, though Trump didn't know it yet. He had poured out every insult, every ounce of bluster, believing he was on the attack. But in truth, he had exposed himself as contradictions, his volatility, his arrogance laying the perfect foundation for what Obama had prepared to reveal. And as the studio lights glared hotter, as Trump's voice cracked once more under the weight of its own fury, Obama finally leaned toward the microphone. The silence before his words was thunderous, the anticipation unbearable, the calm before the storm had ended. What came next would change the night forever. The moment arrived not with a roar, but with a silence so heavy it seemed to bend the air in the studio. Trump had finished another rant, his words tumbling over each other, his face flushed as if blood itself were rebelling against the strain. He pointed a trembling finger at Obama, his voice cracking as he spat. You've got nothing. Nothing. Just fake news and lies. But Obama did not rush. He did not match fury with fury. Instead, he inhaled slowly, the pause itself commanding attention, and then he reached for the stack of papers on his podium. The rustle of pages was louder than Trump's entire tirade. The cameras tightened their frame. The crowd leaned in. Everyone knew something irreversible was about to happen. Obama's voice was measured, calm, and surgical. Let's start. With your own words, he said, unfolding the first sheet. He adjusted his glasses, his tone as professorial as it was devastating. On February 12th, during a rally in Ohio, you promised the American people a healthcare plan that would be, and I quote, ready in 2 weeks. He held the page toward the cameras. This is the transcript, word for word. Trump blinked rapidly, his lips parting as though to object, but no words came. A murmur rose in the audience, some gasps mixing with the faint sound of stifled laughter. Obama didn't stop. He slid the transcript aside and produced another document. Now, here's a leaked internal memo from your own administration, dated 4 months later, stating there was no healthcare plan in development at all. Not one. This memo was written by your chief of staff. The moderator leaned forward. Instinctively, eyes widening as the paper was displayed to the audience and the millions watching at home. The crowd broke into a hushed frenzy, the tension becoming unbearable. Trump's hands gripped the sides of his lectern, knuckles whitening. He opened his mouth again, but all that came out was a strained, That's not fake. His words stumbled over themselves, lacking their usual bluster. Obama didn't even glance at him. He lifted a finger to the production crew. Roll the tape. And then it appeared on the massive screen behind them, Trump himself. In an interview just months prior, confidently declaring, "We don't actually have a plan yet, but we'll figure something out later." The video played in full, unedited, his own voice echoing back at him, damning in its clarity. The studio erupted. Some gasped, others laughed nervously, and a few even clapped before being shushed by the moderator. Yes! Trump spun toward the screen. Eyes wide, his face the color of a warning siren. It's out of context. That's fake news, he stammered, his words tripping over themselves like a man stumbling down a staircase. Obama remained still, hands folded, eyes fixed. Forward. He didn't need to embellish, didn't need theatrics. The evidence spoke louder than any insult ever could. This isn't about opinion, he said evenly, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. These are your own words. The weight of that line landed like a hammer strike. Even the production crew, usually disciplined to remain invisible, exchanged glances that betrayed their disbelief. The camera caught a young staffer in the corner of the studio, biting her lip to suppress a grin. The audience sat frozen, caught between awe and incredulity. Trump jabbed his finger again, sweat glistening on his temple. You don't understand, this is all rigged. His voice, once booming, now sounded shrill and desperate. He looked less like a commander in control, and more like a man cornered, his defenses collapsing under the weight of receipts. But Obama wasn't finished. He raised another sheet, this time a fact-check document compiled by independent auditors. Here are 27 separate instances where your statements on healthcare alone were proven false or contradictory. His tone was even almost weary, as though the sheer volume of lies had numbed him. Damn, these aren't democratic sources, Donald. These are bipartisan institutions, watchdogs, and even some of your own allies. The audience exhaled audibly, the air in the studio thick with revelation. The trap had not only been sprung, was now closing inch by inch. With the inevitability of a steel door sealing shut, Trump's voice cracked again. Those people hate me. They're jealous. All of them. Everyone's against. Me? Always against me? He gestured wildly, eyes darting between the papers, the screen, and the crowd as if searching for an escape route. But there was none. Every exit was blocked by his own contradictions. Every denial undone by his own words. Obama finally looked at him directly, eyes narrowing with quiet intensity. Donald, leadership isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about telling the truth even when it's inconvenient. And tonight, the truth is standing in front of you. The silence that followed was unlike anything the studio had felt before. Not the silence of uncertainty, but the silence of impact, the kind that lingers after a bell has been struck, and the echo still hangs in the air. Trump shuffled his papers, though he had none. His lips quivered as he muttered, This is unfair. Totally unfair." His shoulders slumped, the bravado draining from him like air from a punctured balloon. For the first time that night, he looked small. Meanwhile, the audience, millions at home and hundreds in the room, had seen enough. They had witnessed the unraveling of a man who built his empire on spectacle, undone by the cold, methodical power of facts. And in that moment, Barack Obama didn't need to gloat, didn't need to raise his voice. He simply stepped back from the microphone, leaving the evidence hanging in the air like smoke after an explosion, because the truth, once revealed, could not be stuffed back into the shadows. And yet, the night was far from over. The moment Obama's words landed, the debate itself became almost secondary. It wasn't just a clash of two men anymore. It was a cultural earthquake. Within minutes, the internet caught fire. Twitter feeds lit up in real time, hashtags multiplying like sparks in dry grass. And one hashtag rose above them all. Hashtag Obama exposes Trump. Screens across the world were flooded with clips of the moment the receipts were revealed. Short videos circulated, slowed down, zoomed in, and dissected from every possible angle. The half-smile Obama gave before springing the trap became an instant meme, plastered with captions like, "This is the look of a man holding all the cards." Trump's sputtering denials were looped and remixed into sound bites, mocked, remixed, and memed into oblivion. Celebrities jumped in first. A tweet from Mark Ruffalo read, "This was more than a debate. This was history. Obama just put truth on trial land at one." Ava DuVernay followed, a masterclass in calm, dignity, and receipts. Future generations will study this. Even unlikely voices joined the pylon. Retired Republican senator wrote, "Tonight wasn't about left or right. It was about fact versus fiction, and fact won." The pundits had a field day. Screenshots of live reactions showed wide-eyed analysts covering their mouths in disbelief. CNN's Chiron Reed, "Obama drops receipts, a historic takedown." MSNBC replayed the footage on loop, calling it the most devastating fact-check. In debate history, Fox News, cornered, struggled to spin. Their headline read, "Obama uses props to distract from policy." Yet even their hosts couldn't mask the unease in their voices. Meanwhile, Trump's own platform Truth Social was eerily quiet. For hours, his feed remained frozen, the silence speaking louder than words. Commentators speculated wildly. Was he furious? Was he huddling with advisors? Or was he simply stunned into silence? The absence of his trademark barrage of posts only fueled the sense that something extraordinary had happened. When he finally reappeared, it was past midnight. The post was uncharacteristically rambling, filled with capital letters and exclamation points. Total witch hunt. Obama is a fraud, and everyone knows it. Fake documents, fake memos, fake everything. But the timing betrayed him. The hours of silence had already done their damage. The narrative had slipped beyond his control. By morning front pages, around the world carried the story, Guardian declared. Obama exposes Trump in televised showdown. Le Monde called it unmasking in prime time. Even papers in countries far removed from American politics carried headlines about the clash. It wasn't just a U.S. story anymore. It was global, and at the heart of it all was Obama's demeanor. Commentators marveled not only at the evidence, but also at the way he carried himself, calm, precise, and unwilling to be baited. A viral thread on Twitter summed it up. Obama showed what leadership looks like: patience, truth, and composure. Trump showed what fear looks like: rage, denial, and chaos. The shift was undeniable. For years, Trump had thrived in the chaos of media storms, bending narratives with sheer volume. But this time, the storm had bent against him. Facts had cornered him. The image of him standing red-faced and stammering while Obama calmly laid out receipts was now etched into the public memory. In the space of a single night, the power dynamic had shifted. The world wasn't asking whether Trump's Pret would strike back. They were asking whether he could. And the answer to that question was about to define everything that followed. When the dust settled, what remained wasn't just a viral moment or even a political takedown, it was a lesson. A stark reminder etched into the memory of millions who watched. Preparation outlasts arrogance. Evidence outshines bluster, and truth will always tower above theatrics. The contrast could not have been clearer. Trump entered the stage armed with noise shouts, interruptions, insults, and the same bravado that had carried him through countless spectacles before. But bravado is a flame that burns hot and fast, and under the weight of documented fact, it flickered, faltered, and died. Obama, by contrast, walked in with patience, with documents, and with the quiet assurance of someone who had done the work. And in that choice preparation over showmanship was the victory. What struck people most was not just that Obama won, it was how he won. He didn't gloat, didn't dance on the ruins of his opponent's collapse. Instead, he remained measured, almost gentle, even as he dismantled falsehoods with surgical precision. The camera caught his expression in the aftermath, calm, collected, not triumphant but resolute, as though to say, this was never about MIT, was about the truth. Days later, a clip surfaced from a press gaggle. A reporter asked Obama what he thought of the debate's impact, expecting perhaps a boast or a jab. Instead, he smiled faintly, shrugged, and replied, "I just told the truth." That single line spread almost as fast as the debate moment itself. resonating as a distillation of everything people felt watching him that night. The moral, then, was not abstract. It was lived, demonstrated, and embodied. In a world drowning in noise, integrity still matters. In a culture addicted to spectacle, substance still wins. And in a political arena often defined by cynicism, there remains power transformative. It's undeniable power in simply doing the work and standing by principle. Viewers walked away from that night, not just entertained, but inspired. Teachers used clips in classrooms to illustrate debate ethics. Commentators spoke of it as a modern parable. Ordinary people shared it with captions like "This is how you face a bully" or "Receipts don't lie." It became more than politics, became a cultural touchstone, because in the end, this showdown was never truly about one man exposing another. It was about the timeless struggle between arrogance and discipline, between noise and truth. And it was about the reassurance that, even in chaotic times, dignity and preparation still carry weight. The storm had passed. The lesson remained. And for millions who watched, it was one they would not soon forget. What we witnessed was more than a debate, it was a dismantling. Trump's bluster collapsed under the weight of Obama's calm, methodical truth. One man shouted, the other showed receipts. And in the end, it wasn't volume that carried the night, it was preparation. If you felt the impact of this historic takedown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with everyone who still believes facts matter. Because this battle is far from over. In our next video, we break down the one Republican senator who dared to challenge Obama and regretted it. Trust me, you won't want to miss how that story ends. Subscribe now, the next chapter drops soon.